Hello, I'm Dr. Ron England, and I'm going to do it as an example using the database of how to use drop-down lists to pull information, that the user enter information using a drop-down and actually call a stored procedure with that information here. So pretty straightforward type of video that we're going to do here. What I have done already is I've created a couple of views. Now what I want to do is create a form where I show the students, I show the courses, and I actually have a button that lets you register a student in a course. So what I've done is I've created a view courses, and I'm going to show you some courses that I've created. The view itself is create view, where I select ID and prefix plus number together as course from courses. So the prefix and the number together give you the course itself. So if I were to simply change out this with view courses. Oops. And I'll change this to star. There they are, 4709, 4834, 4813. You see, I've taken the prefix and the number and I put them together in the view. Okay, don't need that anymore. So the next thing I can do is I can show you I've done the same thing with the student. I'm going to script the view out so you can see it. Here it is. Select ID, and now I put the first name, a space, and the last name together, and I can show what that will look like here. We'll do star, and this will be view student. And there's all the different students. And I've actually got student number 1 and student number 2 are both John Doe. I could delete some of those, but that's okay. So now I've created these two views, one to show the students, one to show the courses. Now I'm going to go over here to a form where I've actually dropped in two drop-down lists, one with the student, the word student in front of it, one with the word course in front of it. And then I've got two data sources that I've dropped onto the form, SQL data sources. Now in the configuration of the data sources, okay, I'm going to use my connection string to this registration database. I'm going to use the view student view with all fields, okay, and that's what should return with that one. For SQL data source 2, okay, I'm just going to do the same exact thing, only in this case I'm going to use the courses. So SQL data source 2 will pull back the values of the view courses and show those. I'm going to take the first data source, drop-down list, okay, and I'm going to choose the data source to be SQL data source 1, with the data field being the name, that's the display, and then the data field for the value is going to be the ID. The second one, okay, I've got the course as the display and the ID as the value coming back. Now right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and test this. So running over here, it should show me the students that I should be able to select, and it then shows me the different individual courses. Now I can't actually do anything with that, so I can go ahead and close this and stop the debugger. Now the next step that I want to do is I am going to create, I want to do a couple more things here. I'm going to put a button on here, and that button is going to be text register student, and I'll call this BTN register. Okay, go back to design mode. Now what I want to do here is now I want to actually see what's going to end up happening after you do this. So I'm going to go one step further here, and I'm going to put in a grid view, which I have right here. Okay, now that grid view, guess what? I'm going to need another SQL data source for that grid view. So I'm going to drop it in here too. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show the results. If I go back over to my SQL, I've got a third view that I've created called View Registration. And what it will do is it will actually show me all the registrations. Right now I've got John Doe registered for multiple courses there because I was playing with it, but that's a view that shows me the registration. That'd be an exercise of how to create that. But what I'm going to do in this data source is same thing. I'm going to connect it to that view. Should show me the same information up here. And I'm going to bind the grid view to data source 3. So that should show up there beautifully. Okay, that's all done. So those three are there. Now the last thing I got to do is I've got to have an action. Those all are going to work. Now I have to have an action when I click the register student. So I'm going to double click on that, go back behind the scenes, and I'm going to have the button register. Now to do this, I need to somehow, now I'm going to go ahead and do this in code, because what I need to do is I need to take the values from those two drop-down lists and I need to call a stored procedure here. Well, if I look at that, go back over here and I look here and I look at my stored procedures, I have one. Add course offering. Well, actually, I don't. So I'll actually have to create one. I don't have a stored procedure specifically for registering a student. And the way you would register a student is what you would do is you would go to the table called student enrollment, was what I call the table, which has two columns, student ID and course offering ID, those two things, and it would put it in there. Now, what I've done here, however, is I've actually shown the courses. I haven't shown the course offering. So there's a strategic error when I'm doing this. Courses don't actually, you can't register a student for a course. You can only register a student for a course offering. Okay? And I actually see that when I look at the student enrollment. Now, the reason I see this is because when I named the fields in this table, when I put student ID and course offering ID, I can see those very easily there. Now, how do I fix this? Well, there is a way to fix this, and I'm actually going to fix it after I build this stored procedure. So I'm going to go over here to stored procedures, and I'm actually just going to do this, create procedure. And I'm going to call the procedure SP register student, and it's going to have two things that go into it. The student ID, okay, and that's an int, and the course offering ID, and that's also an integer. And all I'm going to do in this is I'm going to insert into the student enrollment. Okay. For good form, I like to put the fields themselves, so I'm going to insert into the student ID, and the other one's going to insert into course offering ID. And I'm going to take the values that I passed, which is at student ID. And notice I just use the same names here, and that does make my life a little easier because I'm not trying to remember a lot of names. That at symbol does make them different things. And voila, I now have SP register student. And if I go over here to my stored procedures and I refresh, that one's going to show up here. Oops, you know what I didn't do? Haha. I don't know what. Use registration database. Go. And I also like to, I usually, in good form, I'll put a go at the end of this too. Okay, now, I should see, there it is, register students, now in my list of stored procedures. Okay, so I can get rid of that. So I've got this, and it's going to do the registering a student. Now, remember what I did because I looked up here and I said, oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to enroll a student here. I have a student enrollment table, but now I noted, oh, look, it's the course offering ID, not the course ID that I need to put in here. Well, guess what I can do to fix that very easily? Okay, I can go down here to view courses. Okay, I'm going to script and alter. Okay, now it's still prefix a number that I'd like to see here, but the ID I really want is the course offering ID that goes with that, and there has to be a way to do that. Well, there is. I'm going to pull that from courses, okay, and course offering, and it's worth noting that the course offering, okay, courses themselves has an ID, okay. If you look at course offering table, this is in the tables, you'll notice that it has the column course ID. That's where they're joined. So I need to join, just like I would in a select query, where courses.id is equal to course offering dot course ID. Now here it's going to make this field here, because there's an ID in both course offering and in courses. I need to know which ID I need to show here. Well, the one I really want to bring back is the course offering, because that's what I'm going to use this for. Now, what this does do is it makes my naming of the actual stored procedure a little bit odd. But if I compile that, it will compile. Now the ID associated with the course that they select is actually the ID of the offering Now, that could mean that I'm going to have multiple offerings of a course, because course offerings have a semester that go with that. So I may want to put in more information that goes with this, and I can. I'm actually going to do that. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to throw in a third table, which will be semesters. Okay, and notice I'm just modifying my view. Now, what I want to point out here is that when I modify the view, it doesn't require me to change the stored procedure. So, not the stored procedure. It doesn't require me to change the interface, because the return is still the same. So now, if I look at the semesters, I'll note that the semesters, if I look at the columns, okay, there's a semester ID, and if I look at course offering, there's a semester ID. So I'm going to do semester.id equals course offering dot semester ID. That's where they join. And now I can come over here and I can look at what I have in semesters. I want to see the term and the year that these are offered. So I'd say it's term identifier, okay, plus now the year, plus, and I'm going to put a space in here, plus. Notice that the year turned purple. That's because you do need to have it here. If I compile this, it should compile, except that I misspelled the word semester. It's not semester, it's semester. And voila, semesters. Get it right. And it's compiled. Now if I come down here and I look at this view, okay, spring 12, COP 4709, summer 12, COP 4834. Wow. A lot of stuff in a short period of time. Now, if I go back over here and I was to look at my, and I'm back here and looking at this, okay, I still have this data source here which shows the registrations, and I believe I still went ahead and chose this. Now, if I run this, now, the question is, I made huge changes to the view, okay? But I didn't change the name of anything in the interface of the view, so that change didn't cause any changes over to here. So now I got spring 12, 4709, and summer 12, and I still got those students. Okay, I still don't have, this register student still doesn't do anything, because I didn't attach it to anything here, but that would be the last step, is putting all the pieces together. Now, if I go ahead and close this and I go back, what do I want to do here? Well, when I click this register student, I want to take the value from here, and call a stored procedure. As you recall, we had a way to do that. Okay. Well, how do I do this? Well, throw up another SQL data source. So I'm going to turn the debugger off. Come over here to my SQL data sources, which are kind of cool. They're becoming very useful. And notice I left a little space in there for it. Okay, this SQL data source is now going to be used to call the stored procedure that I wrote. So now I'm going to be doing this custom SQL statement stored procedure. I go next. Okay, it's a stored procedure, and the stored procedure that I want to run is register student. Okay, so it's going to call that stored procedure. Okay, now student ID. Where am I going to get the student ID from? Well, I'm going to get it from a control. I'm going to get it from the drop-down list 1, which was where the student was. Okay, and that's the value that we return. The course offering is going to come from the control drop-down list 2. Okay, I probably should have named those better. Okay, so it's going to get those from. Okay, I don't need to test the query here because it's actually calling a stored procedure. Voila. Now, all of that work should go along. There was only one thing I have to do when I register that student is I want to update this grid view. Okay, and to do that, I got to go behind the scenes and I got to tell it that the grid view needs to be rebound. Now, let's put it all together now. Okay, there's my student. Well, this time I'm going to take Fred Flintstone and I'm going to register him for COP 4709. And voila, it doesn't register. Okay, why not? Okay, I do. Okay, why didn't it register? Okay, think about it. It's very straightforward. What all did I do in this when I hit the register student button? Okay, well, what tells the program, okay, that action needs to occur when you hit the register student? Okay, nothing. Nothing tells it to do that. And if you go to the database, you're going to find that it didn't actually do anything there. I never put the action and connected it through. I want you to understand that just because you've connected the objects, until you trigger an action, okay, it doesn't cause that action to occur. All right, well, that isn't very, very difficult to do. What I've got is this SQL data source, and if I go back, and let's go back and look at the data source which actually has that action. This is the one that does the action to specifically call the stored procedure. And it calls the stored procedure on the select. Well, we've done this before, so I've got to trigger that. So what I'm going to do is I want it to trigger when I do register student. So now I have SQL data source, remember that was data source 3. I need to call the select. That was the command that has the stored procedure behind it. And problem is that it requires arguments, but we know that we need to put data source select arguments dot empty because I've done this before. Arguments. I think I got it spelled right. Dot empty, and that should put all. So now that should trigger SQL data source 3, which is the one that has that. And let's go look, make sure that was data source 3. I'm sorry, it was data source 4. Okay, if you look at this, that's the one that has that. Okay, so I got to go back over here, make sure I use the right one, otherwise it will throw an exception. Save, run, bring it over. Now, let's take good old Fred Flintstone. Let's register form 4834, hit register, and voila, he shows up nice there automatically. So, in summary, really a lot of stuff happening in this video. I went to the database. I created the views that were useful for me in the drop-down lists. That should be done on the database side. I've created the courses, which are really the course offerings that should be done on the database side. And I even modified the view without changing the code, realizing that I could do the view as long as I didn't change the view interface, what the fields were that were being returned. I put in a grid view, which brings back the values from a third view, which shows the registrations. I put a button in, and in the button I created another data source, which was meant to call the stored procedure, and then I put all of that together and then triggered everything from the button. And here I go. I can now start registering students willy-nilly for courses, and there they all show up automatically. And that is a beautiful registration system. Thank you very much. I will be posting the code, but I'm showing how to do this with a simplified system. Thanks.